most people do for a living is going away. We fucked with the blue collar working class in America. We had this social contract. Hey, if you do your part, we got you. You're part of this. And then we started to fucking shatter that. We saw this in the housing crisis of 08, 09. When all those people had that shit taken away from them, they were pissed off. Now, I would argue they pointed that ire in the wrong direction. So not to get political, but I think they vilified the wrong people. They vilified immigrants who had nothing to fucking do with it, who were doing jobs that nobody else wanted to do. They vilified political leaders who were actually looking out for them, etc. But all that aside, we cannot let the politics of it keep us from missing what happened. We took all of that away from them and they got pissed. And politics in this country got more divisive, more extreme, violent in some cases. When you take away agency from somebody, you back them into a corner. So now do that for all the fucking white collar employees. Do that for everyone who stayed in and did their fucking homework and went to college and took out all those fucking student loans and who feel like they have played by the rules. They are the pride and joy of their families who actually got their degree, in some cases a master's degree, who saw their career path laid out for them. And now they see that their life's work is obviated by a machine that's just better than them this fucking fast and costs $20 a month.
Boom! Ooh, got your ass.
Some of us cry from courtside cavalry. Some people are stand up and rise. Some people are sit and cry.
What's happening, fam? L.A.R. movement still moving. Subscriber die trying. You see the thumbnail. More importantly, you saw the clip with Howard the Duck. But this death of white collar America or white collar jobs. A lot of what's going on right now is blue collar. Like they say, the country's going downhill financially, economically, and people are losing jobs. And people don't want to say this, but even like during the pandemic, they had the whole essential job thing, right? And a lot of people who are losing jobs are going to be, that'll get automated out of work or white collar jobs. So from my perspective, what it looks like is white collar jobs were overpaid and let's just say infantilized, right? Like, oh, if I got a white collar job, I get to sit in the AC all day long and I'm just, walking around and, typing on a computer and I'm just chilling and, and I go get my Starbucks coffee and I just go in the office and, we have 11 meetings talking about absolutely nothing half of the time. And then, hey, man, I go home and I get, 80, 90, $100,000 for this, right? And people are looking like, I can get a computer to do what they're doing. You get what I'm saying? And a lot of what went on is, and you see this from Wall Street using, artificial intelligence, law officers using artificial intelligence and just pretty much doggone almost every industry. So you have a country who plays this, game, and you can use a racial thing. Oh, we have Hispanics here that are illegal because Americans don't want to work. What they're saying is Americans don't want to work blue collar jobs. You know what I'm saying? Americans don't want to work where it's hot or where it's cold or where it stinks or working the land or working oil rigs or working in construction. We just don't want to do all of that blue collar stuff because, oh my God, all of that labor is beneath me. I need to, spend hundreds of dollars on different suits so I can sit in the office in a nice not a reclining chair, a nice office chair that has lumbar support because I have to read these reports. To read those reports, somebody actually has to do the labor to make those products. So all the people who are making the products are blue collar, and all the people who are just looking at the computer are white collar. And people overvalue white collar work because, and just from my point of view, part of the reason it's called white collar work because white people were doing it. That's part of capitalism. you get these people to do the heavy lifting, and you get these people to do the labor, and we'll just sit in the office. And it's like, well, you're not needed in the office. It's, to be perfectly honest, there hasn't been much good from white collar workers. Like there hasn't been much innovation. There hasn't been much creation. There hasn't necessarily been anything that helped America. What was that movie, The Big Short? The Big Short, when they were talking about the housing crisis and the housing bubble bursting, and it was all white collar people, and the importance of that being all white collar people was, well, what they didn't even know what they were doing. They were just going out, eating, doing the Tim Robbins, yes, yes, yeah. They were doing that type of stuff. Tony Robbins, not Tim Robbins, but they just going on to these meetings that are just overpriced parties and bobbing around, and they don't even know these products that they're selling, and they don't even know what's going on in the actual world. They have no idea. So you have that's part of your venture capitalist. That's part of your what do you call that? Oh, it's not venture capital. Hedge funds and all that. Like that's part of AIG, Enron, Lehman Brothers, the idea of, the banking system falling apart and the car market falling apart is the idea. Like AIG was like insurance. So the idea of being too big to fail. So we got to get bailouts. That's all white collar. When you get to the man who got the man of United, the man that got killed, that was the CEO of United Healthcare. The overcharging of people. They're not covering people who paid their insurance premiums because, hey man, I need a bonus. And having the society go, okay, fine, you get shot, whatever. And then the CEO's like, take my picture off of the website. I don't want to be next. You shouldn't be scared if you was doing good business, right? But you wasn't. So we already know what this is. But it's for the most part white collar crime. I was looking at a guy talk about professor. He was on I forget the show. He was like, basically, let's just say a doctor used to make 4 times what a nurse did. Now it's like 8 times. A bank manager, used to make like 40, 50 times what a teller makes. Now it's like 100 or 1,000 times. And it's like people have overvalued this white collar work. And I've seen people do this all the time where talk about the good old boy system and nepotism. Basically, you have a lot of incompetent people, stupid people, lazy people getting overpaid in white collar jobs. And basically they, it was, you were gutting the company because this guy gets, 6 figures here. This guy gets 6 figures there. That guy gets 6 figures there. And they just basically riding the coattails of people who worked years before them. And now it didn't really actually make their businesses any better. So now everything is like in a down spiral. And who's actually keeping it up and propping it up was actually the people working. So now, you have let's just say the board. The board's like, or the shareholders are like, why is all of this upper management, middle management, why are we paying these people this much money? They're not doing anything. Why are we paying these people this much? They're not doing anything. Cut those jobs in half. And then, and I remember that like 10, 15 years ago in a recession where they had, people who were making hundreds of thousands of dollars, they couldn't get a job they wound up, I'm not going to say couldn't get, they wound up getting jobs as like delivery drivers from Pizza Hut because they just got laid off because the company was like, we don't need you. We can get somebody younger, we can get somebody cheaper, and now you can get AI. So it's like, it's this idea that, what has white collar America done? And it's really nothing. Even when you think about the whole tariff and trade situation is basically a bunch of American companies who felt like I can go to another country, another continent, and pay these people cheap labor, third world prices, and use that, to overpay my white collar workers in the U.S. They'll say, "Oh, these people are doing design." So basically, these people drawing something out. I'm gonna draw this out. This is how it's gonna look. But somebody in another country gotta put it together, and it's like, oh, okay, how long is this gonna work? That's why you go at, how can I say this now? You see some of these farmers like, man, these rules are breaking us and it's crippling us. And it's like, yeah, construction companies during this, we need to send all the illegals back. Okay, we'll send them back. And now construction is slowed dramatically, right? And I've said it, like I've seen less Hispanics working construction and more white people standing around, sweating profusely, moving slow, because they're not accustomed to work. As much as they'll say, when I was 18, 19, I was busting my ass. You use 18, 19, you was busting, and you was busting your ass for about 2 years, then you got a promotion and you've been in the AC for the last 25 years. I don't want to hear what the fuck you got to say. Like, really. That's why you've been fat for the last 20 years. You know what I'm saying? So white collar America is just, is obsolete. And there's nothing they can really do about it, because, even going to the educational part, that's why people tell you people are going to school and getting an education on a BS degree that's not going to help them in the real world, because people were so accustomed to going to college, getting a degree, and some white people hiring some white people to do some basically mediocre stuff, and that started slowing down in the 90s. So now it's 2025. What they tell you, but I'm gonna leave it at that. You tell me what you think. Like, share, subscribe. Catch y'all on the next one. Peace. You ever been at the top of the universe? I'm gonna tell you that.